Don't forget about the pins on the back. So then you fold it right side out. Take a look at your seams, see how things are sitting. This hair is going to stick up funny until you glue it down. But you can take a peek at everything. Everything looks pretty good. So then flip it back. And we have to do the top seam. So you just kind of fold it in half and match your sides. And then pin this across. And you're just going to sew straight up the edge there. I usually use a little bit of a bigger seam here, depending on how much hair and other things I had in the seam. Sometimes you'll have more or less left over at the top. With this particular head, I have a little bit more than I usually do at the top. So I'll make a seam that's a little bit bigger than my normal seams. I'm going to cut off the extra so I can tie this off. Okay. So now we have the front of a head. And we have the back of a head. So the last step in assembling your head is to put the two together. Now this is where it's crucial that you're paying attention to where your seams are, because I have sewn the back of the head onto the front of the head inside out before, a few times. So you want your head to be inside out with the seams on the back, and you want your back, that's the front of your head, and you want the back of your head to also have the seam facing out, but you have to turn it in so that you can fit it into the inside of the head. So this is the nice part, this is the nice parts kiss. Line the tops up, top seams, and pin them. And just work your way down each side, pinning the seam as smoothly as you can as you go. Alright, so there's actually going to be a little hole at the bottom, and that's where the head connects to the body. So we want that little hole, and that's also obviously where you turn it right side in when you're done. Because if you sew the whole thing shut, you're not going to be able to flip it inside. Okay, so then you sew all the way around the seam. So I'm going to get started on that and check back with you guys when I'm done. Now I'm doing the last few stitches here on the outside seam. This is always the most exciting seam because this means you're almost done. Now make sure you give it a good tie off at the end, because this needs to be a strong seam, because this is where you're going to turn the head right side in. Okay. Now once again, you got to take all your pins out. make sure you get all your pins out, because if you give a plushie to somebody and it's got a pin in it and they cuddle it and it stabs them, they will be very sad. Now the fun part, turning your plushie right side in. Yay! Alright, so now we've got all of our bits sewn in the right place. And the only thing left to do now is stuff it. I use polyfill. I think it's a brand name. And you stuffing in the head. These heads take a lot more stuffing than you might think. I've got a big bag next to me here, just full of stuff. Now I tend to sort of, you know, mush it around, try to get it to be even. Big old bag of stuffing. So I'm going to keep stuffing this head and skip ahead a bit in the video. So I'm almost done stuffing now. I'm just filling in some of the spaces in the front of the face. I like to make sure that it's stuffed really well along that seam, so that try to eliminate any wrinkles that might happen along the edge of the face. So right now I'm putting stuffing kind of in his cheeks. And then what I usually do is just sort of use my hands as if it was like a ball of clay and just sort of spread the stuffing out kind of evenly. Now I'm noticing here that one of my V's has come loose, which means I probably didn't sew it tight enough seam there. So I'm going to do a quick little repair. And close that seam back up. And so other than gluing his hair down and making it look all pretty and stuff, this is basically how his head is going to look. And then the last part, of course, is attaching it to the body. Now I have the body here ready to go. His outfit's not done yet, but we can pretend. So I'll actually show you guys a little bit of the hidden stitch that I use to put the head on the body. This is a lot of times for people one of the hardest parts, because it's kind of a tricky stitch if you don't really know what you're doing. And I didn't know what I was doing the first time I did it, but it worked out. I usually get lots of extra thread so that I can make it all the way around the head without any problem. So I start by, first I gotta get his clothes out of the way. I'm just gonna pin his shirt down. You have to put any clothes on the body that have to go over the head before you sew the head on, because you can't get the clothes over the head. So usually I do the whole entire body first and then I sew the head on at the very end, but for the purposes of our demonstration, I stick the needle straight out the middle of his neck. Like that. I'll pull it through. And then I go up under his chin and stick the needle straight out through the middle of his chin. And then I repeat this process, moving over slightly with each seam, going up and under, and making sure that you're basically building like a zigzag, like a ladder pattern. You just have to make sure you don't cross. I'll show you guys once I do a few. I don't know how well the camera will pick it up, but it's like a zigzag. So you keep going all the way around the head. Don't worry about pulling it too tight. If you try to pull it too tight, you probably, snap your thread and have to start all over. And that's a big pain. I mean, you can pull it a little tight as you go, but you don't have to. I used to yank it real hard and be like, the tightest seam ever. But you really don't have to push it that much. Transitional section around the arm is sometimes kind of a challenge. But as you can see, I just sort of let his body sort of flop around while I work on it. When you get to the back, you just want to sort of try to make sure that this back seam lines up with the middle of his back. So sometimes you might have to take smaller, ladders across the back and bigger ladders across the head. Try to get the seams to line up. And you get things wrapped around other things. Roar. So this is my middle seam, middle stitch. And I want to make sure that's about in the middle of his back. Usually I'll pull it a little tight there, but, like I said, not super hard. And when I started sewing plushies, this was definitely the hardest part for me to do. Make sure his little stuffing stays in there. And you kind of want where the chin and where the front and the back of the head and the chin all meet, you kind of want that to be right over the shoulder. So sometimes you have to kind of finagle it. Oops. I just spend a lot of time twirling him while I try to get everything to line up. You just got to find the angle that's the easiest to sew the direction that you need to go. And then as you start to get close to the end, it gets a little harder to get up and under where you need to be. And then as I get towards the end, I do start pulling it a little bit tighter with each stitch, just because I want, the seam to all come together. You guys can't probably see what I'm doing right now, but I'm just continuing the same stitch. I go under and out. And now I'm back to the front. And then when I get back to the front, usually what I'll do is just sort of mash his head in the shape that I want it to be. Make sure it's on properly. And then I will usually just stick the thread straight in and come out over by the shoulder. And this is usually just where I tie things off. Because a lot of the times right at the shoulder you get this little open triangle. And I just like to, because this was the first shoulder we went over. So it might have been a little loose here. And I just like to tighten that section up a bit. And usually just pull a knot through, and there we go. And then make sure you tie it off real good so his head doesn't pop off. All right. And that is how you make a plushie head. And this guy needs some pants. So thanks for watching. I hope that was super helpful, and good luck with your plushing.